Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. This week, folks, or in this video, shall I say, we're going to talk a little bit about the many paths and the endless possibilities. But before I jump into that, remember we jump in talking about organizational culture, and why is that? Because oftentimes on a daily basis, that's typically where we come together as a team, right? But that doesn't mean that we don't come together also within organizations outside of our profession, right? Could be clubs, could be many things. It could be your church, it could be civic groups you're organized with, all of the things, right? Local community events, friend circles, and family, right? So take what you will during these discussions and use these things to help your life become more thriving and your organizations as well. Let's not forget the whole point is that we help our lives to be thriving, but we also have to do this together, not just as individuals, but as teams, right? As groups and connected groups, right? So all the dots connect, folks. Nothing is wasted, right? Hopefully. But today, the many paths and the endless possibilities. So you might be asking yourself, Steve, what are you talking about? Well, a lot of times decision making, right? Decision making for our individual lives, the groups we're involved with, organizations, all of it, right? Community, culturally, geopolitically, all of the things. Decision making that we have provides us oftentimes with many paths, right? And those many paths can result in more paths, right? And and the possibilities that can come from the choices that we're making, right? Those many paths. But it's difficult because the paths, while there may be many paths, the paths don't necessarily benefit you. They don't necessarily have the highest benefit. They're just paths, right? To possibilities. But what are the possibilities? We don't always know this. So choosing a path can be often difficult. It can be a head scratcher, right? And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the ancient past, a few hundred years ago, yesterday, or if we're thinking, more forward thinking, and we're thinking about now, we're thinking about 10 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. I don't know if you heard that train, but it doesn't matter where we are in the human timeline, let's put it that way, that these many paths and many possibilities, the decision doesn't get easier, right? But we can also be influenced by many things, right? We can be distracted. It could be, just the daily grind of life, the daily grind of dealing with, taking out the trash and doing the dishes, and it sounds simple enough, right? Going grocery shopping and hither and yon, going here and there, and just all the things that make up and fill your day and exhaust you, quite frankly, right? So making decisions about what path to take for an outcome you hope to achieve, because you know that there are many possibilities, or you feel that anyway. You wouldn't be making a choice to go down or potentially consider a path if you didn't think that there were some good possibilities. But again, we don't know what's influencing some of those pathways, and some of the some pathways are being sold to us. Some pathways, kind of trick us a little bit, right? I have kind of a sweet tooth, right? And I don't really buy bakery goods anymore. Don't get me wrong. I love the taste. I love the flavor. But I also know that that's a slippery slope, right? I don't need all that, right? I'm not saying don't do that at all. I'm just saying for me, that would have been a thing that in the past I'd have been like, "Ooh, get some baked goods, get some treats, And it doesn't mean you can't have a treat. It just means that you have to be aware of what can be a trap for you. Say your personal health, or just all the things. It could be that something that you ate. I'm using food. I don't know why, food, right? But it could be that something that you ate young, when you were younger in your life, you can't eat now, right? It may be people are lactose intolerant, people who become allergic to this, allergic to that, all the things, right? And so you have to make an adjustment, right? But that doesn't mean that the world at large doesn't keep trying to sell you all that, right? I remember being a kid, all the sugary cereals and all the things and the cartoons and the commercials, right? They were pumping that marketing at us so hard. And we were bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Why? Because they put a cool toy or some kind of trinket in the cereal box. I remember, hey, I'll own it. I remember climbing up on the counter. Don't recommend, unsafe kids. Don't do this at home, or adults. Climbing up on the counter, to get the cereal box, from the thing early in the morning when nobody was awake, and literally putting my hand deep down into the cereal. It was just me. I was an only child, so I could get away with that a little bit, right? It wasn't like I was messing up food for everybody else, but and trying to fish out the toy or the surprise, whatever, right? But that's it, right? All of these things, so many of these things that have been propagated and marketed and all, uh, cluttered up our decision making, so that there are numerous paths. And sometimes you just want to have the treat, right? Doesn't mean you want to spend your whole life eating that same treat, though, right? You can't make a meal of a donut, right? I mean, you could, but I'm just saying you can't make a continuous meal on a usual basis of a donut. It's not good for you, right? It doesn't give you the benefits that your body needs, right? Your not your body, but your mind, all of it, right? So generally speaking, right? So it's no different with all the other decisions we have. And within an you might be saying, well, gee, Steve, why are we talking about food still? But anyway, but in our organizations, leaders are presented with paths, right? And support staff and the broader team have inputs, right? And they should give inputs. And so the leaders have to then sometimes have to make a call and make a determination about something and, go down a certain path. But I've seen this in organizations, and I've seen it in culture too, where there were people within the broader staff and on the team who were pushing their own agenda because they knew that if the decision was made over here, their buddy in town runs the XYZ shop and they would get the business. You don't know, of course, if you know this in the, real time, you're going to catch that, right? But if you don't know it real time, you're going to find out later, right? And then you're going to go, oh my gosh, and then you find out maybe that there was a quality issue. No, maybe something completely fine, but the methodology and the mode was definitely not, definitely wasn't from a point of evaluate everything on an even scale, right? It was tilting the odds in somebody's favor, kind of unscrupulously to do that, right? So these things can happen. This can happen in groups that you're involved with. This can happen in civic groups and friend groups, families, where people are pushing their own agenda. Hey, yeah, this product looks really great, and you find out, hey, they're selling this product, right? Why didn't they just tell you that, right? Why weren't they just open about it instead of being sneaky, right? When people are being sneaky, or institutions or entities are being sneaky to try to confuse us or shift our decision making one way or the other, then that's just nefarious. That's just manipulative, right? But then you have to say, well, why is this occurring, right? But it's a head scratcher, and it takes a little bit of investigation of peeling that onion back to figure out what's really going on here. But oftentimes, organizations don't have time to spend excessive amounts of time doing that deep dive research. And we put a lot of pressure on quick decisions. We want immediate decisions, right? We have a fast food mentality. We want immediate decisions. We want our leaders to crank out immediate decisions, right? And some are unprovoked. And then there might be leaders too that are also slanting the tables to their advantage, right? Kind of turning things to their gain. I've seen that in organizations as well, as we all have, where particular leaders might have done some things to make things work out best for them, right, in their favor, right? Meanwhile, the rest of the team suffers, with withholding resources so that they could show, that the site, a site, for an example, that a site's performing well, but in all reality, it wasn't. They just had to strain out every bit of resources, and the entire team barely could get the job done safely, right? These are the kinds of things that happen. And then what do you see? You see people getting hurt and all those kind of things, which is super sad, right? We don't want that. So better to be upfront and make honorable decisions, make decisions. And the other thing too is a lot of these pathways, some pathways, yeah, we want to take care of our customers, but remember our team, they're also our customers. And so we're not, trying to take care of the external end user of our product all the time. Sure, we're doing that, but it has to look, folks, it has to work on three fronts, okay? It has to be the external, the end user of our product and service is satisfied, right? That's a no-brainer. Then our team, right, that they're taken care of, they have the proper resources, and that you're taking care of them, and that you're, providing a solid and foundational and growth experience for them too, right, as members of your team. And then the other third, and then it's that order too, folks. You go in any other order and you mess it all up. Now this applies whether we're talking about an organization, a friend group, family groups, you name it. Pick the group, pick the size, a culture, country, it doesn't matter, continent. Remember, take care of the end user of your product and service, great. And then take care of your team, fantastic. And then take care of the growth of your organization. You do it in that order, and you're going to be fine. But if you switch that order around, then it automatically will bring, your any growth is going to be this. It's going to be a warbling downward, right? You may not see it right away, but you're going to see it. Mark my words on that. So again, many paths, endless possibilities, but such a difficult thing to be able to pick a path, and we've all been there, stuck at crossroads, stuck trying to make decisions, stuck trying to figure out, well, if I go down this path, what would that bring? I've been there myself, in between project to project, or move to move, or transition from living in the deep south to the west and the north, and all the things, other things to consider, all the decisions and all the pros and cons of why I should do this here and maybe I shouldn't go there, and what's the benefit and what's the obstacles and all those things, right? The pros and cons. We have to figure those out. And then as we do that more and more, we get better at that. But what's challenging too is if you have people, say, that are advising you, whose paths have been fairly linear. They've never really taken chances, never really, ventured off the path. And because they haven't ventured off that path they're on, they think the path they're on is fantastic. But in reality, they may just be on that no growth path, right? They may be on that, hey, I'm on this path because it's safe, or at least I feel it's safe. And really what it is people have gotten used to the obstacles that are on that path. It's not that it's necessarily safer, but they never stopped, assessed, and said, hey, let's take this higher road, right? Let's take the higher path. And in taking that higher path, once you're able to discern that, because this could bring us some great returns, right? For our end user customers, our team, and the organization at any scale, folks. And so the other part of this too is we don't want a bunch of people around us on our support staff that are afraid to speak up and speak their minds and tell us what time it is, right? If our support staff can't tell the emperor that they have no clothes on, right? Then you have a problem, because if everybody keeps telling you, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, all the time, then you're not going to be able to make a good decision. And more often than not, what happens is you're going to make a decision because people are afraid to be even the littlest bit of unbiased in their situation. You're going to make a decision that creates a failure, and that support staff's not going to take credit for that failure. They're going to, as soon as you make that decision, at some point, they're going to say, oh no, we tried to tell them, right? This happens all the time. This is a human thing. This isn't to any one group or another. This is a human thing. People will backpedal like you wouldn't believe. And people you thought were on your team were on your team if you're a leader. And this could happen at any scale. It could be a supervisor asking the broader team, right? And then all of a sudden, we don't know why I did that or why she did that, right? And so the broader team makes the supervisor looks like a complete fool, right? And so upper management goes, right? And so now what have they done? They just kind of, somewhat sabotage that supervisor's, for example, in that example, supervisor's credibility and all of it, right? Falsely, my might add, set them up, right? Do you think this doesn't happen all the time? It happens all the time, everywhere. And this is why when you're making, choices on assessing the many paths, you have to look a little bit behind things. You've got to go a little further deep and say, is there anybody in the shadows that are trying to manipulate the situation, and not because of outright manipulation, but could it be because of a lack of understanding or experience, right? So you have to take and measure the experience from where you're getting inputs, right? If you have somebody who's been doing the same thing their entire life, fantastic. They're going to give you great perspective from that road. But if they haven't been on many other roads, right, many other paths, they're going to what? Lever away from any other path, because it's not comfortable. Because we've never done. You've heard this before. We don't do it that way here. We've never done that before. Well, if you've never been successful before either, probably, at least not to the level that you hope to be, you're going to have to change something. Remember, what's that saying? I can't remember. If you want to achieve results you've never have, then you're going to have to do something you've never done, right? I can't remember who said that, but it wasn't me, just so you know. And so you have to break out of the norm. Sometimes, folks, you're going to have to make a choice to go down a path that everybody goes, what? Right? Of course, assess the path that you're taking is going to be beneficial, right? It was going to be a smart path. But once you do, because only you know the variables that are within your heart and your mind that are allowing you to go down that path. It could be a career move, right? It could be that sort of a decision. And you may want to go down a certain path, but say your friends or your family or your community, whoever, thinks, what? You were hypothetical. You were a doctor. That was safe. You were doing that. It was fine. But you want to go over here and do this thing now. Why? Well, because I want to, because many reasons that don't measure up to what you're applying from the outside, that I'm measuring holistically for my entire life journey, right? This was a calling at one time, and now my calling is this, right? People struggle with that. People want to keep you in their boxes, and it's not because they're hateful, right? It's because they're comfortable with who they projected, your identity to be, right? Oh, that person, they're the mechanic, they're the mechanic that fixes my car. Well, all of a sudden, they sell their shop, and now that person has been, say, painting, as kind of a side gig, painting murals or whatever, some kind of artistic thing. Well, now they've been accepted at some gallery over here that you don't even know about, and then they've got a whole line of paintings their life is shifting into a completely different thing. But oftentimes what you see is you make those shifts and you find success. I've done this too in organizations where you go in and you get that shift occurring to where you're able to allow them to find success. And then when you do, then everybody's all like, oh yeah, we knew that we knew this was the right thing to do. No, you didn't. You had no belief whatsoever. But sometimes people need to be shown, right? Sometimes, and that's what leaders do. That's what, people stepping outside the box. And you have to understand this. If you're a person who's playing it safe, maybe your whole life's been playing it safe. That's fine if that's your choice. But remember, if you want to achieve or do or find breakthroughs in areas you've never done, you're going to have to do things you've never done before as well, right? To do that. And sometimes it'll have to, it could be shifting. It could be your whole life experience changes, right? Maybe your whole family has changed. Maybe your whole friend groups have changed. Maybe you lived in this community, you moved to that community or whatever. Maybe you're more nomadic, right? You're a road dog, right? You're doing your work on the road, whatever it is. You sold your house and you went to, live off the land, and got a small cabin. It's like, hey, most people now look at that and go, oh, that is so cool, right? But understand that if you want that, you're going to have to learn to do some things you've never done before because it requires a different level of workload to achieve that particular lifestyle, right? And all kinds of examples in between, here and there on those things. But it's no different in every other decision we make. Many paths, but also many possibilities, right? So just keep in mind, folks, we need to be unbiased about our own decisions, our own, paths to choose from. We have to be brave enough to make decisions that sometimes aren't aligned with people around us. Sometimes we have to break from the norm, but also understand that that other people are doing the same thing. And when you respect the sovereignty of people doing that, then you're protecting love, and you're protecting love in their life, right? Which is kind of a core theme around the book that I wrote, The Journey to Transform Culture, which you'll see on the main page of this YouTube channel. I invite you to check it out for you as a leader and your team. And you may be just a leader of your family, right? Or it's you, your dog, and your cat, right? Whatever, or your horses, or whatever you have, right? You may be it. You and your animals. Guess what? You're a leader. Doesn't really matter what scale we're talking about, right? Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, hit that good green domino to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only are we helping to transform culture, but we're transforming our own lives. But remember, we can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing to transform on the inside. Super important. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.